Hello and welcome to Our Last Meal, the podcast on grief, loss, and food. I'm your host, Andrew, and if you're new to Our Last Meal, every episode I talk with a guest about someone important in their life that they've lost and what role food played in the relationship. My guest this week is fantasy author and host of the Roll for Sandwich series on TikTok, Jake. Jake and I had a chance to talk about a lot more than sandwiches this week. I really enjoyed getting to speak with him, and I hope you enjoy listening as well. If you like this episode, please consider subscribing to the podcast and giving it a rating and review on whatever service you listen on. As always, the podcast does touch on sensitive topics such as death, grief, and loss, so please be mindful as you listen. Hello and welcome to Our Last Meal. I'm your host, Andrew, and my guest this week is aspiring fantasy author and TikToker, creator of the series Roll for Sandwich and the Adventures in Ardia TikTok channel, Jake Powles. Jake, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. I mentioned before we got started, I am a big fan of the channel. Something about the idea of just these random crazy sandwiches that it seems like it's really connected with a lot of people. How has that been for you as the creator of that?
It completely unexpected. I definitely did not see this blowing up the way it has. I mean, I'm almost at 1.5 million followers on TikTok, which is crazy, especially being a, almost in my late 30s, and 2 years ago, thinking TikTok was a silly thing for children. So it's funny.
Well, yeah, because I'm the same mid 30s. 2 years ago, I was like, TikTok, that's for the kids. And now, I mean, it's I've got multiple. Again, you're a perfect example. I've got multiple channels I'm a fan of just because there's a lot of interesting content out there and a lot of really creative people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen personally just like a lot of the ones that you've inspired. I've seen I saw a video of a guy who his girlfriend did a roll for sandwich birthday surprise for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
So
saw
she
that.
had and even like the ice cream bar. I've seen somebody that they were doing the same thing with like the ice cream. So I mean, there's clearly you've struck a chord with people. What made you decide to start that channel, and like how is that the concept that you landed on?
Well, I didn't even plan that to be the concept for the channel as a whole. Like if you scroll way back in my videos before I started Roll for Sandwich, you'll find some just general D&D like DMing content. I was DMing my first campaign as a DM based in the world of my fantasy novel, just for a group of friends. And I started this channel as a way to just kind of put things I'd been thinking about as a DM kind of out into the public to see where they went. I was doing a lot of like prop work and stuff. Like I made some maps and some props and stuff for D&D, so I was posting those videos and showing those off, like miniature painting and stuff like that, just kind of showing what I'd been up to as a separate from my original TikTok channel, which is now been completely dwarfed by this. But it just started as a place to kind of put my random D&D stuff, and then I had the idea one day to do this Roll for Sandwich thing, and I didn't think it was going to be like anything that we're at like 80 plus episodes now, and it's insane. So I just thought it would be fun to take the same concept that I use for like making encounters or making random things that my players would encounter, and do that with my lunch. Also because I'm a stay-at-home dad with a toddler, and so making regular content is not the easiest. But if she's in her high chair and she's eating her lunch, it's not that hard to film my own lunch. Now things have evolved since then, but it's not that hard to film my own lunch and then stick it up on TikTok, and it took off. So
That's great. I mean, and I love too that it's it's something. I'm assuming you've always been passionate about D&D or something that it means a lot to you. How long have you been playing?
I mean, it's one of those things where I've been interested in it a lot longer than I've actually been playing it.
Yeah,
Like I think the first time I actually played it, other than like once or twice in high school when I had no idea what was going on, uh, was like 2017. Um,
really.
so yeah, it's one of those things where like I am I've been a big fan of like podcasts like the Adventure Zone and things like that for much longer than I actually have been playing D&D. So from stuff like that, I kind of had a knowledge base going into it where it made it easier to start playing. But one of those things was just I just never had anybody to play with for the longest time. So
Yeah, it's and that can make it hard.
mhm.
So I've never played D&D myself. My core group of friends from college, we had board game nights back in college, and we always a lot of fun. And D&D was one of those that we always said, well, we should try it. We actually we did start to create characters one time. We just were never able to get it off the ground just because people still had class work, things
Mhm.
like that. And I remember we ended up looking up the I think to name my character, I use the same Wu Tang Clan name generator that Donald Glover used to come up with the Childish Gambino name.
That's funny.
Um, and years later, I can't remember what it was, but we always wanted to try it. But like that idea of having those people to play with, I mean, those board games and just things like that. I mean, just tabletop stuff. It can be a ton of fun, and it's a great way just to relax with people and just connect.
Mhm.
I am curious. So your channel is definitely growing past D&D fans. Have you had anybody that's reached out to express to you like, hey, because of you, I've gotten back into Dungeons and Dragons, or I'm wanting to give it a try. You've kind of sparked an interest.
Yes, absolutely. I've had several people tell me, I thought it looked cool, so I tried it. I'll have people comment on my videos saying I'm playing my first session tonight and stuff like that. So it's definitely been cool because I really enjoy it, and seeing this video series break out beyond just the small sphere of D&D TikTokers means more and more people are being exposed to what I think is a really enjoyable way to spend time.
Yeah. I mean, and it's one of those things. What I like about it too, and I think this is we go back to there's a lot of really interesting content on TikTok, and I think I like the fact that you have somebody that can strike a chord with people, whether it's something like, hey, this is interesting, this is silly, this is I never knew this. It's something new, and you can open them up to a whole nother audience, or open them up to a whole nother set of things that they may be interested in. There's no telling like how far and wide it can reach. And just I don't know. It's just I love the fact that you're able to take somebody who's like, oh, this guy he creates really random sandwiches. Like, oh, he made one with a waffle and with some refried beans, and now it's like, hey, let's get together a D&D campaign. Let's try this out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's great. Though. I know you said too that you're a stay at home dad. So I've got a little one myself, and it's really interesting. I mean, has this been a cool way for you to get her involved? I mean, how if you don't mind me asking, how old is she?
She just turned 3, so we we've actually been like very careful with trying to like I have been a you know not really planned to be a celebrity, and now I'm kind of a small time celebrity. But my daughter never signed up to be a celebrity, so we we always try to like I think her hand has been in one video where I had her drop the dice, but other than that, I try to keep her like off of the social media and stuff like that. Like allow her to make her own public content when she wants to. So
Yeah.
that was kind of our decision. So
Well, no, and I'm with you. I was I guess more curious if the sandwiches that you get to make, what she thinks of those. But
oh,
uh,
I mean, she's 2. Well, she's been 2 up until this point. Now she's 3, but I mean, it's hard enough to get her to eat normal food. So she has no. I mean, she'll when if these days it's more often that I'm not recording while she's around because she's uh, not conducive to that. But when I was, I mean, I start getting out my lights and doing stuff, she'd say, Daddy's making a sandwich. And so she's aware of it, but not as much as, she's not trying the sandwiches or anything like that. And, like I said, it's hard enough to get her to eat real food. So,
Yeah, my 6 year old. It's I cannot tell you how many times I've felt like a terrible parent because it's like I'm making chicken nuggets or making a ham sandwich again, but she's got to eat something.
yep.
The the rule that we try to go with now is you don't have to like everything I make. I just ask you to try it, and if you'll try it, you never know what you might like.
Right.
I've said it here on the podcast before, but the thing that I've gotten her where she loves it now, and she told me this last night even, chicken with pasta and pesto.
Mm-hmm.
Super simple but tasty, and if I make it, she will eat every bite of it. So there's a lot of that
Mm-hmm.
happens in this house now because at least it's not chicken nuggets, it's actual chicken.
Right.
Um, I think you're right though. I will go back what you said about she didn't sign up for it. I feel very similarly. Obviously the podcast is not on the same level of the channel, but I mean, I I personally I just my daughter she's 6. I don't think she can really understand and consent to like I want my face out there and I want all my information out there and I want to be talked about out there. So it's one of those things. It's I think you're right. I think let them make those decisions in their own time. Respect their autonomy and give them that space to to be their own person.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now, the whole bonnet podcast. We talk about it in the intro. We talk about it as we're exchanging emails. It is food and loss. So it. I'll tell people it's not necessarily a fun topic, but I think it's always something that people can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can always. I think everybody's got a certain food or a dish that when they think about it or when they have it, they think of a family or a friend or somebody that they've had a special connection with in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so can you just give me a little background on the who you were going to talk about today, those individuals?
Uh, yeah, it's I've entered this season of life now where it seems like the status quo is changing all the time. Uh,
Yeah,
New people are being born and other people are passing on, and it
yeah,
seems to happen more and more frequently at this age. Um, in the past 5 or 6 years, I've lost three of my grandparents, uh, my wife's mother, uh, and had a child. And so life looks a lot different than it used to. Um,
yeah,
my my father's parents both passed away in I think 2016, um, and I I very much connect them to two specific foods, uh, kind of three, that we would always have at their house, and they're not even like fancy dishes. It's literally, so every time we went over there, my grandma would have, she had this cookie jar that was always full of Dutch windmill cookies. So they're like uh, gingerbread cinnamon type cookies, usually with slivered almonds in them.
yeah,
Speculoos, I think, is another name for them. It's a they're pretty popular in Michigan here where I live, and to it's a very uh, Michigan thing because the other thing was Verner's, which is a
it's the
ginger
ginger
ale
ale.
soda. Yeah. So and that, I mean, growing up in Michigan, that was like literally if you were sick, you drank Verner's. If you had a fever or whatever, like it was literally prescribed to you by your parents. So we always, they always had a bottle of Verner's in the fridge. They always had windmill cookies, and we'd go over there, and uh, my brother and me and my dad would play cards with my grandpa, and we'd drink Verner's, and we'd eat windmill cookies and pretzels, and just uh, you know hang out around their kitchen table. So
Yeah.
I very much connect those uh, to that set of grandparents.
Yeah, I know you said that it's nothing fancy. I personally subscribe to the philosophy that food doesn't have to be fancy to be good. It doesn't have to be fancy to mean something. Yeah. So personally, I think about a bologna sandwich at my grandmother's house. If I could go back and be 7 again and just eat a bologna sandwich at her kitchen table, I would take that over any high end steak.
Mm-hmm.
Any fancy dish you could think of. Um, Again, nothing fancy, but just it's the memories. It's the memories.
Right.
Now those cookies, I could be wrong. Are those the ones that come in the blue tins?
No, those
Okay,
are. So I know what you're talking about.
those
It
are the
might be
cookies
called
you buy so you
butter
have a place to keep
cookies.
yours. Yeah,
Right, the sewing kit.
yeah,
Yeah. No, these are. I mean, if you just look up windmill cookies, you'll find them. They are. So those ones that you're talking about are like almost don't taste like anything. They're just kind of
yeah.
like they almost just taste like butter. Windmill cookies have a very much like almost like it's not pumpkin spice, but it's like those like clove and cinnamon and gingerbread type of a taste. Um,
I Yeah,
they're
I
good.
just looked them up. I'm in North Carolina. I've seen these. I've seen probably not the most authentic, but I've seen some of these in the grocery store here. The next time I go to the store, I'm gonna have to grab up some of these and try them out.
Yeah, they're tasty. They're good.
Do you keep these in the house now?
Not like permanently, but I definitely will get them from time to time. They're not like they seem to like flavor wise, they're like in season more around like fall and Christmas time. But I mean, you can find them all year round. But I think every once in a while, also they come out with like Santa Claus shaped ones at Christmas time.
Yeah,
So I think the last time I had some in the house were those.
yeah. Now, so I know you said you don't keep them often. Have you had a chance to let your daughter have one of these cookies though, and some Vernors
Yeah,
and
yes, she's had one of those. Well, not Verner's, but we she's she'll she'll make my wife give her a sip of her LaCroix, but we try to keep her away from soda at this point.
yeah. That was one we tried that too. It's but there's always somebody in the family who's like, oh, just give them a sip of Pepsi or give them a sip of Coke. It's okay. It's like, well, no, but
Right.
those teeth, I'd like to get some mileage out of them. So if we can avoid that,
Yeah.
and then just I think ginger ale to a toddler can be a bit of a hard sell. My daughter,
Right.
she looks at me like I'm crazy when I drink it.
Yeah, and Verner's is pretty harsh. It's not like it's not the most mild ginger ale.
Yeah. It's I don't know about you, but I don't know if you've established the dad flavors yet, where there's just like certain things that you eat or drink, and everyone around you's just like, like, oh, I'm gonna get a pizza, I want sausage and onions on it.
I mean, if you've watched the show, you know that I will eat many things that other people won't eat. So uh, people always ask if my wife tries the sandwiches, and she has a much more limited palette of what she enjoys. Um,
No,
so sometimes, but most of the time, no. But
I
I
guess it depends on good.
I was gonna say sometimes I feel like an old man because I'm making myself a like liver and green pepper sandwich or something, and it's like, yeah, I'm 80 apparently.
You're just a step away from I keep pistachios nearby, and I have a black coffee with a hard boiled egg and cracked pepper.
Yep.
No. Yeah, that's I have seen that before. And there are some certain things on there, and and I'm assuming you always complete the sandwich.
Yeah, that's kind of the linchpin of the show. I feel like there needs to be risk and there needs to be consequences for bad rolls, or it doesn't emulate D&D.
Yeah.
So I eat
I
the whole thing.
I'm just gonna say this too. So yeah, like I said, I'm a fan. I will midday on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Whenever I'm eating my lunch, I'm like, I need to pull up TikTok. I need to see what the new sandwich is. I will fully admit this, but just talking with you, I'm appreciating more and more the you know what you've put into it. That idea of, okay, it's not just like a fun concept. It really is, trying to take this, this idea of, okay, how we approach D&D, or how you approach D&D, and like, okay, let's apply it to something that nobody would think about, and really follow it through.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like it makes it more interesting. Like if there's no stakes, if I can just make a gross sandwich and then throw it away,
Yeah,
number one, that's wasteful, but number two, like that's just, I don't know, it feels spammy a little bit. It feels like I'm just trying to get clicks versus creating something that I think is fun, that I think, even if it is silly, has something behind it. So,
you're going for authenticity, not just reviews.
yeah.
I have a lot of respect for that. Um, I think platforms like that, they can tend to. I'm not going to bash anyone. I'm not going to call anyone out, but I think you can see, a lot of top channels. I mean, and you do see authenticity is not always at the heart of it. I think your approach is. This is going to sound cheesy. I apologize. It's a little more noble, right?
No,
You're trying to do something fun, and trying to follow it through. I have a lot more respect for that.
thanks. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's just how I approach my life in general. So that would be how I approach my content.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, you're the what you create should be a reflection of yourself. I think about this podcast. It's and please understand, it's not that I like to go up to people in real life and say, "Tell me about somebody that's passed away." Um, it's a bit too forward sometimes, but just having a real conversation with somebody and trying to give them space to talk about people that mean something to them. Just trying to be open.
For
I don't know.
sure. I mean, this is the first podcast that I've agreed to be on, and part of it is the concept. It's like I value real conversations. I'm an introvert. I don't
Yeah,
like My wife is an extrovert. She can talk to anybody about anything forever. Every word that comes out of my mouth is premeditated, or at least like drudged up from very much within myself. And so if I'm going to, you know, when I take the time to lay my thoughts bare, it's not for no reason.
yeah. Well, I will say I appreciate that you would agree to come on and talk with me, because on the one hand, again, subject matter I know is can be difficult, but on the other hand, too, just the fact that it is, you know, that introvert side. I know what you mean, because it's funny you say that you and your wife are kind of opposites on that, and my wife and I are the same. You could put me in front of a brick wall and I could probably have a conversation. Um, my wife is much more reserved, and it is funny how those two types always seem to find each other. Um,
Yeah.
you know, I I pulled her out of her shell a little bit, but she's helped me in so many ways to just be more self aware, and I think more compassionate, right?
Yeah.
Um, just to talk to somebody who spends more time in their own thoughts and who is more introspective. Um, I think is helpful, because I mean, like I said, to me, it's helped me in my relationships with people at work, just being more understanding of different personality types. But even in this endeavor, is just trying to have more thoughtful conversations with people. So um, I don't know that I've got a question for that. I like I like how there tends to be those that opposites attract, where they come together and they bring something out in one another.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, so you said that your father's parents, it was the Verners and the windmill cookies. Did you talk with any family before coming on the show, just to kind of reminisce about any of the foods, or just to? I know some guests, they will kind of, I need to talk to somebody. I need to talk to my parents, or my grandmother, or my aunts or uncles, or whoever, just to see if I remember everything correctly. Did you do any of that?
No, I figured out pretty early what I wanted to talk about. It's
Okay.
also been fresh, fresh in my mind. So the other people I wanted to talk about, my maternal grandfather passed away in January, um, and
Sorry to hear
that
that.
thanks that set so a lot of my like food awareness um, came from my maternal grandmother, who is still living. Um, but my grandfather passing away set into motion the events that led to something that I was not expecting as much. Um, but I think it's a very real thing, is not grieving the loss of a person, but the loss of a place.
Yeah.
My grandparents' house uh, was sold, and my
Mm.
grandma moved into a assisted living. And that house and that kitchen, like that is where like people are like, I don't understand how you can eat all these weird foods, how you can do it. So that was like my second home growing up. They were, 5 minutes down the road, and it was my mom's mom. So my, you know, she, I was home. Me and my brother were home with my mom, uh, and would like my mom would clean my grandma's house every week, and we'd go along. We would go there, if my mom needed to do errands or something, we'd stay with grandma. We were always at grandma's house, and
Yeah.
grandma was always cooking, cooking, baking cookies, making bread. Um, in the kitchen, they had this really like old house built in like the 50s or possibly earlier. That had this really cool kitchen, big, big like island buffet thing in the middle. Um, brick, um, like a brick oven, like I don't know what to Gen Air thing, like an indoor grill in the
Yeah.
wall, all this stuff. And so she was always cooking stuff. At the end of that little island was a little like 10-inch TV that always had like the Food Network on. So like literally, I'm like a 6-year-old kid sitting there watching Mario Batali and Emeril Lagasse, you know, uh, and just watching these guys and ladies make food, and helping my grandma make food. And she, I tried liverwurst for the first time with her. I was a little kid eating like olives and fancy cheese, uh, and like pickled herring out of the jar. Just all these things that like kids don't really
Yeah.
eat, but my grandma always had this kind of stuff, and it was a big, you know, very much developmental for me in developing my openness with food and my willingness to try new things. Was that my grandma always had all this stuff, and she was just, it was available to try, and
Yeah.
not being forced, not being forced down my throat. It wasn't a whole plate of something wasn't set in front of me. It was, here's a little slice of this cheese, here's an olive,
Give it a try.
and it really like developed my sense of like adventurousness with eating. And so it was hard for me. um, I was there, the last time I was there was April, when they were getting ready. It took a few months after he passed away to get everything in order.
Yeah.
Um, and so in April was the last time I was at their house before they sold it. Um, and even then it was gutted. They had pulled everything. They were starting to sell stuff off and move stuff and do whatever they needed to do, go through things. And so, the last time I walked through it, the bones of the house were there, but it wasn't the same thing as like going
It's
and
not the same
walking around
house.
my grandma's house. Yeah. So, but it was, I can, so I've only lived in two houses, as a kid. There was the house that my dad owned before he got married, that, I was born and lived in that house. And then like in high school we moved, and my parents still live at that house. So the house that I grew up in, as a child. And I feel like most people have this. Like, you can close your eyes and you can walk through every room in your mind, and you like
Yeah.
you have it memorized, you know. And that's the same thing with my grandma's house. Like, I I know every inch of that house. I spent so much time in it, and it's just I get a little emotional when I think about it and realize, like, it's never, I can't ever go back there. Like,
Yeah.
I can drive to where that house is located. I can stand outside and I can look at it, but it's still never going to be the same house that it was. I'm never going to be able to walk in that front door and have there was a little like mail chute thing
Yeah.
right to the right that she always put the like used washed up pop cans because
Yeah.
in Michigan we have a deposit, so you return them. So I'm never going to walk in there, have the hole in the wall full of pop cans. uh, I could walk straight down the stairs into the basement where my grandma had all her sewing stuff and the piano and the TV and all that stuff down there, or go up the landing into the kitchen right there. Like, that's never going to be like, I can hear the creak of the floor, man. I can smell exactly what that kitchen would smell like right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's gone. It's not coming back. It's just this place in my memory now, which is, I don't know, like,
Ooh,
people talk about nostalgia, like, which is a complicated emotion.
I think that that's being incredibly fair for nostalgia. It is. You know, you, this is another reason I love doing the show. Is every time I talk to somebody, it's you always hear good points. And when you were talking about being able to, you could close your eyes and walk to your grandmother's house and you could see it. While you're doing that, I'm listening to you, and at the same time, I'm thinking about my mom's house, right? Um, and it is it's that it sucks, and it's not the most eloquent way to put it, but it does. It sucks because you think about it, and it is something. It lives in your mind, and there is, I think, some comfort in that you still have it with you, and it's something that clearly means a lot to you, and hopefully that's the kind of thing that you can provide. I
Hmm.
whenever I think about things like that, the things that are as cheesy as it sounds, maybe it's not lost, maybe it still lives on in you. And I think on a day where I'm in a good mood, like, yeah, it sounds perfect. That sounds great. But when you really start to think about it, it's hard. But I mean, I think you have to take some kind of solace in that. Um, I also appreciate how you're viewing it, not just as a loss of a person. I mean, that is difficult, but I mean, just that, like, the loss of a place it's a place of comfort. It's a place of safety. And I love too that you said that she would introduce you to all kinds of foods there, and that she would it helped you to kind of develop your palate. um I mean, that's great. I mean, because I'm sure that the reason you're willing to try stuff when you're a kid is because you feel comfortable with the person giving it to you. And
Hmm.
who could be more comforting and more caring than a grandmother, you know
Hmm. Yeah, it's one of those things, like, getting older, man. You see all of the like tent poles, all of the monuments in your life shift and change or go away.
yeah.
And it's like, when you invited me to be on this podcast, I'm thinking about the people that I've lost, and it's like, those people mattered a lot to me. But the person who, especially when we're talking about food, the person who was the most impactful to me with food is the one grandparent that's still living. Um,
Yeah.
but the dynamic has changed. Everything has changed. It's it's still. I feel like the process of grief starts before you actually lose somebody. It's because
Yeah.
the loss is a progression. I feel like you lose little bits at a time, and it's hard because maybe you don't even notice the first bits. you know it's just like, you go away to college, you come back, oh, okay, when did you redo this room, or when did, they're just little things that you never knew. This is your last chance to, see this or soak this in or be in this place, or, you know, oh, you got rid of that table, and that, it's just a table, but at the same time, you sat around that table for years, shared meals together, things like that. And so these little changes, and it's, people change too, and get, less able to do the things they used to be able to do, and things like that. And so, like I said, it's this slow progression that I think it helps to be mindful of when it's happening. um, that was that's my mom's having a really hard time with my grandpa who passed away,
Mhm.
because it was it was not uh, it was kind of quick. I mean, he was in his 80s, so it wasn't, it was still, we knew it was happening eventually, but the actual process that led to his death was, um, kind of quick. And so she's going through all of these things and having these regrets of things she didn't do with him, things she didn't say to him. I mean, I feel like she got the closure that she needed. At least, like, she got to say things that she really wanted to. She was there. She didn't like completely miss out, like some people have, stories where somebody died in a car crash or something and they didn't get to, she got, but there's still, you don't know, you don't even realize the things that you're not, aware of until it's too late a lot of
Yeah.
the time. So,
There's never enough time.
yeah.
That's and we get so caught up in the day to day. I think we lose sight of that. And yeah, it's when my grandfather passed about a year and a half ago. We it was fast, and it was also it felt really fast and really slow at the same time. From the time he got sick to the time that he passed, it just felt like it was dragging on forever. And I don't say that to sound callous. I say it because he was in pain, and he was in physical pain. He was in emotional pain. He was in pain thinking about his family. And
Mhm.
um, at the same time, like from the day that I got a phone call from my mom that okay, he's sick, to the morning I got a phone call from my dad that your grandfather passed last night. It was it wasn't a lot of time. Um, I think you're right, but you made a really good point though about you can tend to lose people slowly, bits and pieces, and you don't think about it. You don't know you don't, and I don't know I don't know what the answer is or what the how you solve that. I think it's one of those things that it has to be a conscious effort of I'm going to try to be more more present in the moment. I think it really is something you have to make a decision and a choice about. But it is a situation where there's always little things that change, and change can be good, but in times, I mean, there are times where it's losing bits and pieces.
Yeah. I think also you're not always aware of what what are going to be the things that you are going to miss, like in
Yeah,
the moment you don't necessarily know what those things are. Like with a I think it's, like I said, with a person it's a little bit more easily identifiable, but like with a place or a time, or even, you know a season of life that you that's the thing. I haven't lost, like I said, up until recent years, I haven't lost a whole lot of people in my life, but I've lost a lot of places. I've lost a lot of seasons of life, things that I think back on and be like, man, I wish I could just live one day in that time of my life again and just like soak it in.
yeah,
Like I've lived in a lot of different places. Uh, it's just, I find myself looking back to those times and thinking about the things that once were, and appreciating them in a new way, but also, being homesick for those places.
yeah. That's I think that's one of the biggest ironies in life is that you want to move on and progress and grow, and all that, and I think that's all natural. But you're right though. It is. There are times, and I think especially as you get older, we mentioned that we're both around the same age. As you get older, and his life starts to change more, big changes. I think it's easy to look back on times of like comfort, and I think sometimes it's rose colored glasses. But I think too, I mean, it is easy to look back into a time that was really just it was simpler, or you were it's I'm not gonna say happier because I think that's relative. Um,
Yeah.
but it was simpler or whatever the case is, and miss it. You know, for you, it's you said that you've lived in a lot of different places. You've had the different seasons of life. If you could, what's the one you think that you miss the most, be it place or time?
Hmm. I mean, I think that changes a lot, just depending on where I'm at and what I'm going through at the moment. I can
Yeah,
think of. I mean, my college experience was so different than my day to day life these days. I definitely miss that. Just you know, being it was it's a weird time where now everyone that I know, all my friends, like we all have our own families. We live in our own, in our own homes. We see each other sometimes when we can. Back in college, it was like if you weren't in class, you were with your friends
yeah.
and you all lived in the same place and you all had nothing else going on other than class. And so it was this weird, like, it was almost like you were all like family, just all living together all the time. It was an interesting season of life. I miss those relationships. I have a couple of them that have stood the test of time, but a lot of them that haven't. And it's just life moves and changes and gets in the way, and um, so I definitely find myself looking back on that time and uh, wishing for that kind of community again. Um, you know, Realistically, I wouldn't trade my family for it. Um, but
Of
it's one of those
course.
things where, you know, if I can strive to emulate it a little bit these days, when if I can make time to hang out with other people, to have friends, I find it worth it.
It's well, yeah. The friend thing is hard, especially as you get older. The friend thing is difficult because you are all growing. Um, it seems like I don't know if you got this when you were younger. People telling you like, oh, enjoy it now because it's not going to be like this forever. It's going to change when you're older. And for me, it was always yeah, yeah, yeah. It definitely it definitely turned out to be true. The friendships changing and or whether they do or don't last. I've kind of noticed that there are friendships that evolve. A friend who was once one of someone I consider a really close dear friend. Now it's just more of a we text each other on birthdays. Uh,
Hmm.
and it kind of and like that when it seems like we've kind of naturally just fallen into that comfort zone, and there's no ill will, there's no animosity. It's just this is where we're at in life.
Hmm.
The ones that are the closest, that are the three guys that are like brothers to me, we see each other maybe once a year if we're lucky, just because we're in different actual geographical places. Still text on a regular basis. I got a text from one of them a couple days ago about his their baby came home from the hospital. You know, it's just one of those things that it evolves, and it seems unfair sometimes how it evolves. But I
Hmm.
think I think sometimes like what it can evolve into can be kind of cool too, because now like we get to when the friends get together now we get to talk about our kids, and the work stuff is like we'll talk about it, but I hate talking work with friends because like that's not what we're here for. You know, tell me about the new cool stuff
Yeah.
that your kids doing. What video games are you playing now? What are you excited about?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how your friendships have evolved there, and or if do you feel like you and your friends when you're able to get together now, are you able to be more aware of the moment that you're in?
um, sometimes I feel like life with a toddler is hard to be aware of any moment. uh,
Yeah, that's not
I,
wrong.
I feel like I'm just kind of holding on by the seat of my pants right now. Um, I know that things will be a little different when she's a little older, but right now it's kind of just playing fast and loose, I guess.
Yeah, it's our daughter's 6 now, so she can do more things for herself. She can get herself dressed, she can bathe herself. Those are all cool. The cool thing now is that instead of her just whining to make dinner, I can have her help me now. That was a
Mm,
cool thing we got to do recently. Was I purposely said, okay, she's gonna help me cook. I'm gonna cut up the meat, so she doesn't have to touch a knife or anything raw. But you're gonna put the seasoning in. It was very garlic heavy, very onion heavy, but she got to season it. Dumping in the pasta, helping to stir everything up. I mean, as they get older, it is, we talk about how things change and how sometimes it's hard. I miss the times that she was little, but I will say this, I'm not saying this is like, oh, I know everything, but I will say this is one thing that you do get to look forward to is it is not, now you're in that state where it's constant new stuff, and the constant new stuff is really cool. The
yeah.
get, Getting to see them develop their personality and their interests, um, getting them hooked on the things that you like, especially those things that you're happy to nerd out about. For me, pro wrestling, I get to watch it with my daughter now. She gets to cheer. She tells me that she doesn't like some of the characters because they're mean to each other, and just getting to see it through a 6-year old's eyes is just I envy you for a couple more years that you get to that.
That's great.
Yeah. So so as far as the people, the places you've lost, was there anything else you wanted to cover there? Any other foods that Matt stood out to you or that were important to you? You you mentioned that your grandmother's moved to an assisted living now. Um,
Hmm.
were there any foods that she made that you had a chance to learn how to make from her that that really stand out? Like this is a food, this is a dish like I crave sometimes.
Um, I haven't really learned how to make. So I'm not like a professional cook. Uh, like I do the sandwich thing because it's pretty simple. I can make. I've got some recipes under my belt, but the thing that I really don't know how to do is bake. Um, which I feel like there's a lot less margin for error when you're baking.
It's a science
Um,
experiment.
yeah. So, but the thing I think about is my grandma's like homemade cookies. Like she would always make, uh, and they were very like I don't know how to describe them, but they had a very specific texture. They always had a very specific like it was whatever combination of she she had a specific ratio of like flour to whatever else that that always made them a certain way, and they were always and they she always had them in the house. Like she'd make she I never went over to that my grandma's house and there'd be a box of Oreos there or something. It was always she always had uh home baked cookies in her orange Tupperware from the 70s. Uh,
I can picture the
and so
Tupperware. Did it have like the
yeah,
big daisy on it?
I think so. And or the like starburst, like
Yep.
round top. Yeah. Yep. And so, yep, her cookies for sure. Like, and I don't really know if there's a way to emulate those. Like, my mom makes cookies, but she makes them a completely different way, and they're good. Like it's not that she does it wrong. It's just that's not how my mom makes cookies. So I don't know if you know if that's just lost to time or what.
Yeah. It's I would encourage you if you can try to find out or ask her how she did it, to do so if she's able to tell you. Because for me, it's my grandmother's cornbread, and I tried asking her a couple years ago. She has early it's either early dementia or early Alzheimer's. I don't know that they've specified which. I don't think she could do it right now. I mean, but she also maybe she could do it from muscle memory. And I remember asking her once how she did it. She kind of gave me just do the it was, but it was that we'll just get this and then make it. And it was grandmas just know how to make stuff. They can try to
Yeah.
tell you, but
Right.
it's hard to get across. Um, but if you can try to find out from her, ask her. But I will say one thing too. So you said how how just good they were and how special they were, but you think about it now. So your grandma's cookies to you, just think about the ones that your mom makes now. That's how those are going to be for your daughter.
Hmm.
My grandma's cookies, the way she made them, something about them.
Hmm. Yep, for sure.
Well, so here at the end, I just wanted to ask, was there anything else that stood out to you that you wanted to talk about or go over? Anything else related to loss, to food?
I feel like I've said most of what I'm thinking about, I think.
All right.
So,
All right. Well, Jake, hey, I appreciate you being on. Before we end though, I do want to give you time to promote anything you're working on. I know you've got the channel, but I know you've also got one or two other things in the works. So, by all means.
for sure. I am still working on my book. I don't know when that's going to be done, but I'm trying. Like I said, I never planned for this channel to blow up. So I have a toddler. So my my time has shifted a lot, but a lot of people ask me if I'm still working on the book, and I am. So hopefully not too long. And then I'm going to be the media guest of honor at Con Fusion, a sci-fi, fantasy, and literature convention in Novi, Michigan, at the end of January. So if you are interested in that, if that sounds like a cool thing, you can find more information on my website, which is rollforsandwich.com.
Okay. And I got to ask before we end. I know you mentioned the book. I know you took some time off a while back to spend a month working on it. Can you give just a high level what the book is and what it's about?
That is a difficult question. I feel like for like when you're writing high fantasy, you're talking about an entire world, and I feel like it's hard to sum up. But basically, it's high fantasy in the same tradition as like Tolkien, um, but it's a world that I've created entirely on my own, named Ardia, which is where my handle comes from. And it starts out as a story of a brother and sister. It's very interesting that you. So it starts off as a brother and sister who live with their father, and their father passes away, and they have to take their father's body to through this like dangerous forest to the city that their mother is buried in to bury him alongside her. And they encounter some struggles as they do that, and kind of their whole life changes in the fact that now both of their parents are gone. They leave their farm homestead and go to the city, and it just follows the changes in their life in a fantasy setting. And they encounter creatures and races they've never seen before, and kind of get wrapped up in this epic adventure. So
So what was the and I know I just this is terrible podcasting 101. I know we just did the promos, but now I've just got some more about the book here. So
no problem.
first of all, I can't wait to read this. Second of all, the idea, the concept, was it inspired by one thing? Was it from multiple sources? Where did
Uh,
the spark come from?
a lot of the initial inspiration came from the first D&D campaign that I was ever in as a player. One of the characters, not any of the characters I've mentioned so far, but one of the characters was my character that I played for that first campaign, and he shows up a little bit later. But it was very much like I think like I didn't consciously just like rip a bunch of stuff from things to put it together, but inspiration works in interesting ways. I think
Yeah.
that initial story that then became this whole book of transporting their father's body. I think that there's a quest or a scenario in Curse of Strahd for 5e where you have to help someone with their parents, like transport their parents' body or something. Um, it's been a while, but I think
Yeah.
that was the spark for that short story that then became a bigger part of this novel. Um, but yeah, it's just from all over. But it is. I've been working on it for 3 years. It has evolved and become something entirely its own. So
That's one of the cool things about writing is that you can, when you start out, you can start out with an idea and then it just, you really do have to kind of find it along the way sometimes, but it's
mm-hmm.
just see how it evolves. I don't know about you whenever you get into something, but I feel like sometimes whenever I write something, I just, it just goes and it doesn't, you don't really know where it comes from sometimes. It just, you get started and like, oh, I never thought about this, but it makes perfect sense right now. And you just kind of get in this state of just output. And there's also the times that nothing will come to you.
Yep.
Those are really frustrating.
Yeah. It's been a process over the past 3 years where I've had those streaks where a lot has come out. I've had streaks where I've had to retune those things. Um, I very much have written this in kind of that state of just putting stuff on paper where I haven't had a solid outline necessarily all the time, where then I've had to go back and say, okay, this doesn't make sense, or, I need to change how this works, or I need to, this actually needs to be way later, and I need to put several chapters in between here to explain why this is this and whatever. So it's grown, it's developed, but I've been working hard at it, and I think it's getting there. Right now it's just how much time I can dedicate to it. If this was my full-time job, I could confidently say, end of the year. But like I said, toddler and this TikTok thing. But I'm going to put as much work into it as I can. I'm probably going to take another break soon. National Novel Writing Month is in November, so looking at possibly doing that to try and make another chunk,
Yeah,
take another chunk out of it. So yeah,
that's awesome. I can't wait for that to be done and to read it. Jake, thank you so much for coming on for sharing. I appreciate it. I really appreciate your insight. Again, for listeners, Adventures in Ardia, Roll for Sandwich. If you haven't seen them, go check them out. I, I look forward to it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Um, but yeah, go check it out. And Jake, thank you so much for being on.
thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you to Jake for being a guest today. I've got to say, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that he approaches his content with, and also the conversation we had today. I love the way he discusses nostalgia, and I really agree too with his point about how powerful it can be to lose not only a person, but a place or a place in time. It's just a really thoughtful way to go about it. Really gave me something to think about too. You can find Jake on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Adventures in Ardia. Ardia spelled Aardia. I'm going to be linking that in the show notes on social media. You may already know about him. If you don't, if you haven't seen Roll for Sandwich, I can't explain just how much fun it is just to see what he comes up with, and it's just a really cool series. I like the approach he takes with sustainability too, around not wasting food and just being open to trying new things. So big fan of that. I would also say you can follow Our Last Mill on Twitter and Instagram at Our Last Mill Pod, or you can visit us at ourlastmill.com. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can reach out by clicking the Share Your Story button. And as always, I would encourage you to find time to enjoy a meal with someone you care about. For me, I think I'm going to go make a sandwich today. We'll see you in a couple weeks.